Ford just recalled almost 10 million vehicles, more than 30 separate recalls. And we're not even halfway through the year. The same company that built America's best-selling truck for 49 years straight just spent 5 months pulling those trucks back into the shop, one campaign at a time. And if you think this is just one bad part on one bad model, you are not even close. Because Ford did not have one bad year. Ford has led this entire industry in recalls since 2022, and the numbers are getting worse, not better. So what happened to the company that built the F-150? And why is the most trusted truck in America now the most recalled vehicle on the road? Subscribe, because I break down every automaker that loses its way. And Ford is nowhere near finished. To understand how bad this is, you have to understand what the F-150 actually means. The Ford F-Series has been the best-selling truck in America for 49 years in a row. The best-selling vehicle of any kind, car or truck, for 44 years. More than 34 million of them sold since 1977. The F-150 itself turned 50 years old last year. Ford moved more than 800,000 F-Series trucks in a single year recently, and sales were still climbing. This is not a fading nameplate. It is the most successful vehicle in the history of the American road. Now think about who buys that truck. It is the contractor hauling his tools to a job site before sunrise. It is the rancher pulling a loaded stock trailer down a gravel road. It is the guy who waited until he was 45 to finally afford the truck he wanted at 18. For half a century, the F-150 was the safe choice. You did not buy one because it was exciting. You bought it because it would start in January, tow whatever you hooked to it, and still be running when your kid was old enough to borrow it. That was the deal. Ford sold capability, and Ford sold trust, and the trust was the more valuable of the two, because anyone can build one good truck. Ford convinced 3 generations of working Americans that it would build the same good truck every single year. That reputation took 49 years to earn. Keep that number in your head. 49 years. Because what Ford did to that reputation in the last 24 months is the real story here. So how does a company with 49 years of practice suddenly forget how to build a truck? It made a bet. Somewhere inside Dearborn, Ford decided the future would not be one with metal and bolts. It would be one with software, turbochargers, and squeeze suppliers. Start with the engines. Ford spent decades building big, simple, naturally aspirated V8 engines that ran practically forever. Then it swapped a lot of them out for smaller turbocharged EcoBoost engines. More power per liter, better fuel numbers on paper, and far more complexity packed under the hood. More parts, more heat, more things to assemble exactly right, and more things to get wrong. Ford had already recalled more than 90,000 of those EcoBoost engines in 2024 because the intake valves could simply snap while you were driving. 90,000 engines called back because a valve could break apart at a highway speed. That is the cost of complexity, and it is not printed anywhere on the window sticker. Then came the software. The modern F-150 is not really a truck with a computer in it. It is a computer that happens to have a truck bolted around it. Trailer modules, brake modules, camera modules, parking modules, every one of them talking to every other one over a digital network. Ford even started repairing recalls with over-the-air updates, the same way your phone updates itself overnight. And then there is the third leg of the bet, the suppliers. When Ford recalled more than 500,000 Expeditions this year over chrome trim that could peel into sharp edges, it blamed a supplier for using parts that did not meet Ford's specifications. That is the whole pattern in one sentence. Squeeze the supplier on cost, then act surprised when the cheap part fails. Many of these recalled trucks rolled out of one place, the Kentucky truck plant, the same plant Ford now says it is focused on fixing. Now here is what Ford will tell you about all of this. Ford says it doubled its safety team. Ford says it expanded testing and added software audits. Ford says warranty costs are actually coming down, and that catching defects fast is a sign of strength, not weakness. Ford even has a quality program it calls testing to failure. Sure. The trouble is that the testing to failure program was supposed to show results by now, and by every number the public can see, it has not. Years back, Ford's own chief executive promised to root out the quality problems and told everyone to expect more recalls in the short term while he did it. At the time, that sounded like accountability. One record and one federal fine later, it sounds more like a warning label nobody read. And nowhere is that clearer than in the recalls themselves. So let us go through them one at a time, because the details are the point. Look, I'm not saying every one of these is a death trap. Most get fixed and plenty are just software updates. But watch what happens when you stack them up. Start with the big one. In February of 2026, Ford recalled 4.4 million trucks and sport utility vehicles in a single campaign. 4.4 million. The F-150 alone accounted for 2.3 million of them. The full F-Series, more than 3.4 million. The defect lived in the integrated trailer module, the part that runs your trailer's brake lights, your turn signals, and on the heavy-duty trucks, the trailer brakes themselves. A software timing bug, what Ford and the government both called a race condition, could leave that module powered on but unable to talk to the truck. Ford estimated only about 1% of those trucks would ever actually show the fault. But 1% of 4.4 million is still more than 40,000 trucks that could lose trailer braking, and the government decided that was serious enough to count as a violation of federal safety standards for vehicle lighting. Picture what that means in the real world. You are towing a 10,000-pound trailer down the interstate. The driver behind you cannot see your trailer brake lights because they are dead. You hit the brakes, your truck slows, but the trailer does not because its brakes never got the message. That is not a glitch. That is a crash waiting for a reason. Now the engines. This year, Ford recalled the 2026 Explorer and Mustang because the pistons were built with one tiny part, a circlip, installed incorrectly on the assembly line, a clip smaller than a dime. The remedy? Dealers inspect the engine and replace the entire engine if it is damaged. Then a second engine recall hit the Explorer, Ranger, and Bronco. Same outcome. Replace the long block, replace the engine. So much for the idea that a recall is just a quick software patch these days. Ford is pulling whole engines out of brand new trucks because of one clip the size of a fingernail that somebody skipped on the assembly line. Then the cameras. 3 separate Ford recalls in 2025, each covered more than 1 million vehicles, and everyone was a rear-view camera that could go blank or freeze the moment you shifted into reverse. In March of this year, another 1.7 million vehicles were recalled for the same kind of failure. One camera recall by itself covered 849,000 Broncos and Edges over a module that could overheat and shut the screen right off. And not all of these were the kind you can drive around and ignore. 2 of Ford's recalls this year came with a flat "do not drive" warning. One of them was a front control arm that could disconnect completely, which is polite engineering language for the front wheel coming apart from the truck while you are steering it. Another recall covered more than 2,000 engine block heaters that could crack, short out, and start a fire while the truck sat parked in your driveway overnight. And here is the detail that tells you everything. Ford issued 42 recalls just to fix vehicles that had already been recalled and repaired wrong the first time. 42. That is roughly 1 out of every 4 Ford recalls. The company's own software system had been reporting failed repairs as successful, handing trucks back to their owners that were never actually fixed. Subscribe if you want to know which automaker cracks next, because Ford is the warning here, not the exception. Add it all together and you get the number that broke the record. 153 recalls in a single year, nearly 12.9 million vehicles in 12 months. If you own a recent Ford truck, the odds are not that you might be affected. The odds are that you already are. But the recall numbers are only half the damage. The other half is what happens to you after the letter shows up in the mail. Here is the part that should make you angry. Take that second engine recall, the one on the Explorer, Ranger, and Bronco. Ford mailed owners an interim letter in June of 2026. It was essentially a note that says your engine might fail. We know. Please, hang tight. And the actual fix, the replacement engine, was not available until November. That is roughly 5 months of driving a vehicle the manufacturer has officially admitted can lose power while you wait in line for a part that does not exist yet. And this is not new for Ford engine recalls. On an earlier campaign, owners got the safety warning months before the replacement parts were even ready. You are not really a customer at that point. You are a person holding a recall notice and the keys to a truck you are now afraid to load up. And the government noticed. In late 2024, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration fined Ford $165 million. Not for the defects themselves, but for dragging its feet on recalling those rear-view cameras in the first place. That is one of the largest penalties of its kind the agency has ever handed down. And it did not stop there. The regulator forced Ford to bring in an independent monitor to watch how it handles recalls, and made the company go back and audit its past repairs. That audit is exactly what uncovered the failed software updates. So follow the sequence. Ford gets fined for slow recalls. The fine forces an audit. The audit reveals that a huge share of the earlier repairs never actually worked, which triggers another wave of recalls. The cost cutting did not save money. It built a machine that generates recalls and then recalls the recalls. And understand, regulators do not assign an independent monitor to a company that is simply having an off year. They do that when they no longer trust the company to police itself. And those recalls have cost Ford billions in warranty claims over the last few years, money that, one way or another, gets baked right back into the price of the next truck you buy. And that is the thing about this whole story. None of it is an accident, and none of it is new. Ford did not suddenly stumble into a bad year in 2025. Ford has led the entire American auto industry in recalls every single year since 2022. 2022, 2023, 2024, the year of the fine. Then 2025, the record 153 recalls, nearly doubling the old high of 77 that General Motors set back in 2014. And now 2026, where Ford recalled 9.8 million vehicles in under 5 months, ran up nearly 3 times as many recalls as the next worst automaker, and is on pace to beat last year's total before summer is even over. General Motors, Toyota, and Chrysler each sat at a small fraction of Ford's count. This is not an industry-wide problem. This is a Ford problem. That is not a streak of bad luck. That is a pattern with 4 years of evidence behind it. And watch the defects themselves repeat. That 4.4 million trailer brake recall this year, Ford recalled the F-150 and the Super Duty for the trailer brakes failing back in 2022. Then again in 2025, on trucks that, in Ford's own words, had been repaired incorrectly the first time. Same system, same failure, 3 times in 4 years. The rearview cameras, recalled in 2024, recalled again in 2025, recalled again in 2026. The same defect, over and over, on a longer and longer list of trucks. These are not 20 different problems. This is a small handful of the same problems, escaping the same broken process year after year after year. Now look back at where we started. The F-150, 49 years of being the truck you could trust without thinking about it. And today it sits dead center of the single largest recall Ford has filed all year. 2.3 million F-150s pulled back for a part that can cut the brakes on the trailer behind you. The same truck that built the trust is now the face of losing it. Ford did not get beaten by a competitor. Ford was not killed off by Tesla or by some new Chinese brand. Ford did this to the F-150 itself, one cost-cutting decision and one skip step at a time. So where does this go from here? The next Ford recall is not a question of if, it is a question of when and how many. Right now, owners are sitting on engine replacements that Ford says will not be ready until November. By the time those trucks are finally fixed, there will almost certainly be a fresh campaign, a new module, one more part that did not meet spec. I will be here with the numbers when it lands. If you drive a Ford, go check your VIN on the federal recall site tonight before you tow anything this summer. And subscribe because I track every one of these the moment it happens. Ford is not done, not even close.